when your paper came out, there was it was released in the midst of a political discussion and policy argument about what is the appropriate response, government response right now to the current economic situation, including some prominent voices, Paul Krugman of the New York Times, and some others saying we need another stimulus, a big stimulus, and he cited deflation and concerns about inflation as a reason for another big stimulus. Where do you come out on this question? Do we need a big stimulus because the threat of deflation is so great, or do we have other things in the policy toolkit that we should be thinking about first, and that for which might have more effect, or what's the mix there?
Right. I take a different tack from Paul Krugman's. Monetary policy is probably the first line of defense against deflation. I mean, inflation and deflation are monetary phenomena. They have to do with the rate of exchange between money and goods, and so I think the Fed would be in the front line of defense. Secondly, I wouldn't go for more fiscal stimulus of the type we've seen. It's been poorly designed and wasteful. If we had to break the glass, you know, if things really got bad, I would say that what we should do is have a payroll tax holiday, which is money right into the vein of employers and employees. It would cost around $600 billion a year, and it could be partly financed out of the remaining money in TARP, which is a waste, and the remaining stimulus, and partly financed by further purchases of government securities by the Fed. That's sort of the break glass option. But another stimulus package like the one we had, it didn't work. It was very wasteful, and that's the tragedy. We needed to do the right thing, and we didn't.
Final question for you. Our colleague Alan Meltzer, when I asked Alan about some of these questions a little while back, Alan's concerned about inflation down the road, and one argument that he makes is that by the time Fed officials get around to worrying about inflation, and it can be too late, and that's why he's worrying about it right now. Are there things that the Fed should be thinking about doing or doing that, while they focus on the nearer term problem as you outline it, which is deflation, disinflation into deflation, they can also be saying, hey, we've got an eye towards inflation after that, and there are things we can do to assure the markets and make sure that, that there's the political spine there to make sure that they can deal with that if it gets to be a problem.
No, Alan has been looking at the history of the Federal Reserve, and I fully respect his fears that at times they've been slow to deal with inflation problems. There is a policy prescription that helps there. I mean, there's no guarantee. But if the central bank sets a price level target, let's say 5 years out, that implies a path of inflation at 2%, that essentially says that if we go below that, they get easier, and if we go above that, we get tighter. If that's believable, and I would say that Fed credibility as an inflation fighter is greater now than it has been for some time. I think you can design a monetary policy that deals with the problem that if you fight deflation and get inflation, you can reverse it quite quickly. I wrote a piece about a year and a half ago that basically said deflation is worse than inflation, and the reason being that we know how to fight the inflation. If it gets out of hand, the Fed can tighten very rapidly. So far, we're beginning to wonder if we know how to fight deflation, so it makes me more nervous.
Okay, John, well, thank you for joining me. My guest today was John Makin. You can find his paper, The Rising Threat of Deflation, at aei.org/Makin, which is John's personal page at the AEI website, where you can find that paper and other writings of his. John, thank you for joining me.
Thanks very much.